I'm with you guys on Cade. Big fan. I was joking, when we started talking about these a couple weeks ago, I was like, well, I would never tie up my money in an NBA market when we haven't even reached college football season. But then I'm glad that we're talking about this my first night back, because when I was on vacation, we were talking about this guy a couple months ago when the season was wrapping up. I'm really high on Josh Giddey this season, and I saw most improved. His price was 20-1. You look
Yeah.
at his numbers after the All-Star break last season. He averaged 17.2 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 6.8 assists per game, and that was in 32 minutes per game, right? OKC finished 40-42. They were a play-in team. I think they're going to be a 48-49 win team if healthy this season. And the reason I like him, I think the scoring numbers will probably stay about the same. If anything, maybe they go down, but I think the assist numbers go up. And I really want to see what he looks like with the addition of Chet, who didn't play last season. Chet Holmgren, obviously. But you have a pick-and-roll lob threat now. He could be a double-digit assist guy. He could give you 18 points per game. And also, like last season, he improved. Like I look at Mikal Bridges, and Mikal Bridges, I'd rather play him to win an MVP. Like that's how good Mikal Bridges is. If you look at his numbers when he went to Brooklyn last season, he was averaging like 26 points per game and 8 boards a game. Giddey, though, his numbers, you look at his rookie year, 16 points, 7 boards, 6 assists. All of his numbers increase. And then you look at the nerd stats, his true shooting, 53.3% last year compared to 47% as a rookie. He's improving his shot. I think the assist numbers go up. The rebound numbers are going to be there. I think OKC is going to be a really fun team. And Shea's already won that award. If anything, we'll look at him as an MVP candidate. We'll look at Chet as the rookie of the year. So on a hot, flashy young team, I like Josh Giddey at 20-1, most improved a lot. I played that.
There's a couple names on here that I kind of look at and just cross off and say, you know what? I think their time has already passed. Mikal Bridges is the favorite, but kind of feel like we've already seen that, right? Like he's already kind of become that most improved guy. We saw him become essentially a star in Brooklyn. So you kind of feel like that wave is already passed. Even Jordan Poole. I look, Jordan Poole's in a new place. There's a chance he puts up 28 points a game because he's going to take a million shots in Washington. But you just kind of feel like you've passed those points for them where we've watched those players take that next big step, because that's really what it tends to be. For most players, it's they have a big jump, and especially points. Points is going to be the big one. So I'd probably cross off Jordan Poole. I'd probably cross off Mikal Bridges. Scotty Barnes at 16-1. The thing about him is it's like he can do a lot of stuff, but he doesn't do anything flashy. And some of this does become a part of that, right? Like a guy has a big flashy year, puts up a lot of points, makes this big jump, becomes one of the go-to offensive players. Even Austin Reeves, 20-1. Like, don't you feel like we've already kind of gotten to that point where people are like, we already talked about, because it's a narrative-based award too, to a point, and we've already had this conversation about Austin Reeves in the playoffs. If he has a full season like he did in the playoffs last year, he's probably in the conversation. Those odds probably shorten a little bit, but I just don't know if it's enough for Austin Reeves to be somebody that you look at and say, he's got a real shot at winning that, when there's other players that can really elevate that next level, including maybe even Tyus Jones. I mean, Tyus Jones is going to have a bigger role the entire season. It's always been like, hey, look how good the Grizzlies are when Tyus Jones is starting, never turns the ball over, but he also isn't enough of a scorer where that works. So you start crossing some of these names off, and it helps you narrow it down a little bit.
So I think Washington, they're going to be better on defense this year. They need to get better at it. But, just look at what Kalen DeBoer has done. Everywhere he's gone, he's won. And Fresno State and Washington's offense, Michael Penix Jr., man, it just looks amazing. And they got, great quarterback, a bunch of great receivers. They got to come to the Coliseum this year, but there's someone I think that could derail USC's train. And someone that gave them a lot of problems last year, Oregon State. They don't have to play him in the regular season, but they could see him in the Pac-12 championship game. So a team like Oregon State, they can run the ball really well. They play really good defense. I feel like that's a team you bring in DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson, and man, maybe it works. They just haven't had great quarterback play, even though Jonathan Smith, he's known as being a great quarterback. So I think there's a dark horse one, and I think they were ranked in the coaches poll that came out earlier. But I feel like Oregon State can be it would be pretty fitting for them to win the Pac-12 in its last, year of existence, like the one of the teams that's left over. But, I think Oregon will be there. I think Utah, you can't count them out because they've won, 2 in a row. But I think Washington probably posed the biggest threat. With Oregon State, I think a lot of upside on that for that program.
But then you look at these, man, and some of these are just way too high, in my opinion. New England and Houston. opens at
Yes.
38.5, gets bet up to 39.5. If we could get to 40, which I don't think we will, I did bet the under today at 39.5 small. It's just like with New England, you have a new play caller. Obviously, it's an upgrade, Bill O'Brien over Matt Patricia, but we're probably not going to see a whole lot of Mac Jones. Maybe we see some Bailey Zappi. I just don't think either team's going to show a whole lot. In Houston, they're starting a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud. The first couple drives, they may not look good, and then you're going to have backup linemen. I'm just looking like like over adjustments from last season and from what we see here these first couple weeks, and that's what I'm looking at mostly as totals, though.
What do you think about, because the Texans Patriots total jumped out, like, whoa, that looks too high. What are your thoughts on the Steelers Bucks 39.5? Because that feels like a little too high too.
Same here. That seems like an under, right? I don't feel very good about Tampa Bay offensively this season when their starters are out there, because right now there's a quarterback competition going on between Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield. Obviously, you still have some really good skill position players there. Mike Evans is still there. Chris Godwin's still there. But I don't think they're going to show a lot or play, obviously, in the preseason. And then the same thing with the Steelers. I don't think we'll see the starters and, really good defense, especially when TJ Watt's out on the field. I think that's a little bit too high as well. Trubisky's going to be dealing, Luke says in the chat. I could see that, though. I would go under on that one. Yeah. I mean, I feel like anything like 38.5, 39, and it's going to be different, obviously, for some matchups, but a couple of those just jumped right out at me, and the Hall of Fame game was one of them. I keep talking about Eberflus, but I'm actually going to stay away from that. I played the Bears to win the division. We talked about that enough. I keep looking at Detroit, and it should be their year. I just can't do it at plus 130 at that price because I'm not the biggest Jared Goff fan. I do love Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. I know how good Goff looked the final 8 weeks of the season. I know they face, I believe, the 11th easiest schedule. But, like, when you look at the Lions last year and every year, man, like, they beat up on bad teams. Like, even the win against Green Bay, that was a bad Packers team that just was getting hot against, mediocre opponents to close out the season. They were 3-6 last year, the Lions were, against teams with winning records. You know what I mean? Like, the wide receiver room, Jamison Williams, he's going to miss the first 6 games of the season. I was really excited for him. I love St. Brown, but other than that, like, I don't love the skill position players. I can't make the case for Detroit at plus 130, and I can't make the case for Green Bay at 4-1. So I'm looking at those two teams in the middle. The Vikings, I think they're going to be terrible defensively. Not that Zadarius Smith did anything the final 4 weeks of the season, but you lose him. I love Justin Jefferson, love the Jordan Addison pick, but this is probably the last year for Kirk Cousins. So that's why I look at the Bears at 4-1. I think Justin Fields is going to have his best season as a pro. We know what he could do with his legs. And I know that, there's people that like to rip Justin Fields, especially Green Bay fans. But look what he did at Ohio State. I get that's a wide-open offense. That's the Ryan Day offense there, and I saw the skill position players he was playing with. But he played behind, in my opinion, the worst offensive line, technically the fourth worst offensive line in all of football. They gave up over 60 sacks. Now, you address that need in the draft. You bring in another free agent on the offensive line. Huge pickup in DJ Moore, a very underrated wide receiver. I like Mooney as a number 2. I like Cole Kmet enough. Now you bring in Mercedes Lewis, who I think is a really nice vet, a really good blocking tight end, huge in the locker room. I don't love the defense. You got some young members in that secondary, though, that showed some promise the second half of the season. I like the Bears in the NFC North just because of the price.